Hey, howdy, yo. What's going on, all you beautiful fuckers? I know, we're back. We're hot. I mean, at least I know I'm hot. Not because I'm gorgeous, but because it's 100 degrees out. Not today, but it was yesterday. But we're here talking about 28 days and weeks later. I'm excited for it because I know it's not like Leo's biggest genre, and it's my favorite genre, and I've been doing nothing but talking about these films for a while with him, and I'm just excited that we finally watched them. And I've never actually watched 28 Days and Weeks Later back to back, like I was telling you before, Leo, and it's changed my thoughts and opinions heavily on 28 Weeks Later. But we'll get to that a little bit later. But right now, we're talking about 28 Days Later, written by, oh my god, I didn't have my thing up all the way. Forgive me. Written by Alex Garland and directed by Danny Boyle. For some reason, I always say directed by Alex Garland and written by Danny Boyle, but I know that's never correct. But then it's also got like Killian Murphy, Naomi Harris, and then the man, the myth, the legend, Brendan Gleeson. And then why am I blanking on the fucker's name that played Doctor Who? Oh, Christopher
Christopher
Eccleston.
Eccleston, yeah.
Yeah, Christopher Eccleston. All in this movie. But Leah, what were some of your just like first thoughts on this film?
I mean, going into it, I knew a little bit about it. Like I'd seen various details. Like obviously, I knew it was all shot on digital, but I wasn't expecting it to look the way that it did, and I kind of did catch me off guard.
It's
But
ugly as fuck.
it was very jarring at first, but I got used to it, and I understood sort of the intent with it. But I gotta say, I really liked just the story. Like I was surprised because I've told you that I'm not really a big like zombie flick person.
Well, that was also something I had argued with you about like the 28 franchise being a zombie
Zombie film.
franchise.
It is.
No,
No,
bro,
you can't.
listen.
You can't argue
I
with me
can
on
I
this.
can't
No,
argue
you
with it
can't.
because
Literally, one of
Danny
the.
Boyle does not consider it a zombie film.
Okay, well, Danny Boyle's full of shit. Like
No, it is not, bro.
literally,
I can
literally,
argue with you.
literally, like he has admitted that one of the inspirations was George A. Romero's Living Dead series. Like they're zombies. I'm
Doesn't
sorry,
make
but
it a
they are.
zombie film.
Just because they don't follow his exact rules on what a zombie is doesn't mean they're not zombies.
I mean, honestly, I think it's kind of fitting of talking about like the story of the first one in like the
Mm.
context of modern society with the lame demic. I can't say the actual word because YouTube hates it for some reason, but yeah, like a lot of the story in this film, which I haven't watched in a few years, like definitely it was definitely pre lame demic that I'd seen the 28 days later. So watching the beginning, like I remembered that animals were involved with how the rage virus kind of contaminates society,
Mm.
but it almost kind of feels like a little too close with them being in labs and like that whole the whole thing leaked from labs, like that whole like
Like the
uh,
conspiracy
the
theories.
conspiracy, yeah, I couldn't think of the word conspiracy theory. Yeah, the whole
Mm.
conspiracy theory with that. It kind of felt like this is exactly what the conspiracy theorist watched and just kind of went with. And they're like, this
Mm.
actually happened in 2001, guys. You know what? We went through it once and now it's in Great Britain. Fuck them. No, I don't mean that. But I just think this film speaks a lot to modern society in a way that I kind of wasn't expecting going back into it.
Mm. Yeah, I mean, I remember during like that range of years that we were dealing with all that stuff. Like people kept bringing up like that Contagion movie with Matt Damon.
Yeah.
But I'm, and I had never, these are the first time I'm watching these movies, and I was honestly really surprised by how oddly relevant they still are, like concerning, that the whole infection and the spread of the rage virus. So that was definitely interesting. Like, yeah, I guess everything that I could have thought would have been in this movie just based on other zombie movies that I've seen. Like this handles it a lot more interestingly, and that made me, because it's kind of a similar situation with, I don't know if you remember when I was saying I watched Final Destination for this. I started watching it and then I just ended up watching the whole thing through, and that happened with 28 Days Later as well. I It was really late and I was like, "Oh, I have to watch these." And so I was like, "Well, I'll just watch however much of this I can." And then, I'll finish it later. But then I just ended up finishing the whole thing because I was like, I kind of want to keep watching now.
Yeah, and it's one of those films where it kind of mixes it up. It doesn't take a straight zombie narrative, if we're just going to go with like the zombie terminology for the sake of it.
What other
Because,
terminology is there?
bro, the Ragers, we can easily call them the Ragers, but I don't think people are
No,
ready
that
for
sounds too
that.
silly.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think people are ready for the Ragers. Quick question: have you ever seen The Walking Dead?
No.
Okay, so the inspiration for the beginning of the comic or the opening of the show, same difference, was inspired by the opening of 28 Days Later.
That's
So
funny.
in the comic, Rick wakes up in a hospital bed after being in a coma like
Mm.
3 weeks into a zombie pandemic.
That's
Yeah,
Well, I
so
think what's funny about that is that when I was looking through the IMDb, it said that this one was heavily inspired by a different movie, where something similar happens. Like the protagonist wakes up from a coma in a hospital, and it's like the apocalypse or something. Like
yeah,
like it bore a very striking similarity to that as well.
I just think it's interesting because the beginning of this film is fucking excellent. I every time I go back to this film, the first 10-15 minutes just absolutely sucks you into this world, from the opening of the animal rights activists trying to like take the monkeys and take them away from these scientists, which honestly, I don't think the film needed. I don't think it really adds anything or does anything. I think keeping it a
Honestly, I
little
think it
bit.
makes it a little more confusing based on what we're going to
Yeah,
talk about
I was about to say,
next,
I
probably.
think them keeping it on a little bit more ominous keeps it a lot less confusing once you get later into this movie and then into 28 weeks later.
Mhm.
But I also think it could have like made it a little bit more frightening. I'm also not a person that is a fan of when they put like reasoning behind everything, because
Mm.
I don't think everything does need a reason. It's like the whole Michael Myers stuff. Like, he's evil. That's why the way he is like, guys, stop, please. Let's not do with this.
No, actually,
Oh,
he was, raised from the dead by a cult, and then he became evil.
no, dude,
That's the
that's a different
explanation.
timeline. Different timeline, Leo. Different timeline. At least we're not talking about the one where he was abused by everybody. But that's neither here or there. Yeah, I think the opening, which took, I don't know if you knew what it took to like do the opening 10 minutes when,
You talking
oh
about
my,
like post the prologue, like when he wakes up and everything?
yeah, like once he wakes up and he's
Well,
roaming the
yeah,
city.
yeah. No, I that was the majority of what I knew about this movie. Like I knew that it was shot in. I don't want to say entirely on digital because it's not true, but I know that it was mostly shot on digital, and then I knew that you know they weren't able to like shut down portions of London, so they just had to like get up like really early in the morning, when the
Yeah, they
streets
had
would
to
mostly
find
be
the one
empty.
hour like in the day where no one was on the street, so they were able to shut
I
it
mean, plus a
down.
couple, police officers slowing down traffic a bit, but
No, yeah. And it was always like 1 hour every day, and it was always when the sun was rising. And it's like three or four different major locations in London. It's
yeah,
not like it's just like on a random street or anything like the sequel does, you know?
literally the first thing on the trivia for IMDb says, for the scenes on the motorway, the production got permission to shoot on the M1 on a Sunday morning between 7 a.m. and 9 a.m. The police gradually slowed traffic in both directions. Using 10 cameras, the filmmakers managed to capture a total of 1 minute of usable footage.
Dude, that's insane. And that sounds like such a massive waste of time, but it wasn't. It worked out
I mean,
tremendously
yeah,
for
that
them.
that entire sequence is like iconic. And I mean,
It does a great
I understand.
job.
Yeah, I mean, I understand like I kind of agree with what you said with like the prologue isn't exactly necessary because you kind of get I feel like because you get the explanation like, oh, it's zombies, for lack of a better term. Um, once you get into like him waking up, it's like, oh, you're kind of just waiting for him to like put the pieces together, but an important part of that, like the buildup of that sequence, is like him not knowing what's happened and him sort of like just walking around and taking in like, where is it, like I feel like it takes away from like the tension of it, that him and us as an audience shouldn't know what's going on. um
Yeah, because I think that's one thing with this film that I find kind of finicky. It's the consistency with the own rules and logic they set up with everything. Because I feel like consistently throughout the film, like this dude's screaming through the streets constantly in the movie, and I know it's hard for them to like get a lot of people to like be extras to play the zombies, but it just kind of felt weird that they had him just walk around through the city. He'd just be screaming, but then he goes into a church where there's a bunch of them, and there's really only a door separating them, and then all he's saying is hello. And then like
mm,
five of them just attack him, one being from another room. And it's stuff like that constantly throughout the movie that kind of confuses me, but it's something that like I'm able to like fuck, I can't talk, suspend my disbelief with, because they were able to like make it work so well with making this world feel super moody, desolate, like
mm.
otherworldly almost. You know?
Yeah, it's definitely one of those things of like, you know style over substance. Not, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but in the sense of like you're trying to create, a sense of like the tone, and certain story elements in terms of like continuity kind of go out the window just for the sake of like building that. um
Yeah, because
but
it
I
feels
mean,
like
but
they
I
could
think,
just do random things, and like
yeah.
sometimes they'll show up, but then sometimes they won't.
Mhm.
Like at least at the end when he's doing the siren, like that's so weird that not a single thing showed up.
Well, I mean, they do, but later.
Yeah, like way after the fact. At that point,
Yeah,
though,
but I mean, I think a lot of that also has to do with the fact that they didn't really have like a
the
fully finished
budget.
script.
Oh, yeah.
Because I guess now would be a good time to talk about the alternate
It
endings.
wait.
I
There were. I didn't wait. There was alternate. I did not know that.
You didn't know there were alternate endings to this movie?
No, I did not. No fucking way, bro.
So the ending where they, make the hello thing out of the sheets or whatever, that wasn't the original ending.
Did
Um,
was it when they do like the freeze frame when they crash into the gate? Was
yes
that
and
like?
no. So the
Oh,
problem was that they ran out of money while making this movie. And so pretty much everything was shot in sequential order. Most films aren't, as you and I know. You normally you would shoot them out of order, just logistically, because certain people's
time,
schedules don't line,
money,
time, yeah, all of
schedule,
that
all
stuff,
that.
locations. But this one was for the most part shot in sequential order, except for the prologue, because that was a reshoot. They added that in later, and
That's
they got to the point they had literally like just finished everything up to that point of the car crash, and they ran out of money. um
dude. What?
and I think they quickly they convinced the studio to give them like a little bit more money to shoot an additional scene, which part of it is in the original, or is in the version that everyone can availably watch. But it's them taking him to a hospital because he got shot, and they're trying to like resuscitate him, but they fail and he dies on the table. And then they walk away through like the hospital halls, and then it ends. So that was the original ending that was
Mm.
sent to theaters, and it screened for a little while, but people hated the ending because it was kind of meant to be ambiguous, but also leaning more towards the hopeful side that Selena and Hannah survive. But people didn't really get that. They just naturally assumed like, oh, they're all gonna die now, and so they had to go back and get more money, um, which was it was a lot easier for them to do because as it was screening or being released, it was getting quite popular. So they gave them more money to go shoot two other endings essentially. So
Oh my god.
there's one where he dies still, but it's edited, like it's spliced together with like his subconscious and like remembering um getting hit by the car, which is what leads him into the coma that starts the movie. It's really dumb. I watched it. It makes no sense. It's shot really weird, and I didn't like it. I didn't like what I saw, and I'm glad they didn't do that. Um, and then the other one is it's similar to what we saw, but he still dies, and it's just them at like that cottage or whatever.
Yeah.
And then the other one is the one that was released, which is him surviving with them and being at the cottage. And that doesn't even include the ending that they were originally going to shoot and that was storyboarded of after Frank gets infected, they manage to like tie him up, and then they go to the place where the broadcast has been, and instead of that whole like sexual slavery subplot, they figure out that they can save Frank by doing like a complete blood transfusion,
Oh my god.
and Jim sacrifices himself because they have the same like blood type, and so he essentially does a complete blood transfusion to Frank to eliminate the virus from his blood system. And the reason they didn't shoot that was because it sounds it's as dumb as it sounds, and they were like, "That's just not
Stupid.
going to
That's
work."
fucking awful, bro. What were they thinking? What?
So that was what the original ending was supposed to be. So that was the only one that he didn't shoot. But there's three endings that they did shoot, and
I guess we got the best one.
I mean,
Like it.
there's been a lot of debate online about whether or not the original one of like him dying is more appropriate. I can see how the original one was supposed to be more ambiguous, and I kind of like that, but I also do like the more like hopeful ending that we got.
I like the ending because that's the thing, at least with like the 28 duology at this
Mhm.
point, since we haven't seen years yet, is they're bleak films. They're not
Yeah,
happy. So to be able to get that at the end of this film, like you were saying, the whole third act is not even really dedicated to zombies. It's about a whole sexual slavery ring ran by a bunch of military ops
Doctor
that
Who.
just decided to disband, ran by Doctor Who. Like that's not where I think anyone expects the film to go and somewhat end on. But like you were saying, it ends nicely. They all survive. It's the only scene that's fucking bright. Like not I'm not talking about with the sun out. I'm talking about like the greens are green, the blues are blue. Like it's a bright sequence that I thought was refreshing with all the shit that this film makes you go through because it is such a gritty and dirty film. It was nice to be able to separate from that for a while, for a good minute.
Yeah, and I mean another important distinction too is that the ending is the only thing that wasn't shot on digital.
Yeah,
Like
you could tell.
the last scene, yeah, well, yeah, you can really tell.
Yeah, you could tell.
And it's funny because when I was watching it, I could immediately
You're
tell.
like, oh,
Like I hadn't even looked anything up yet, but as soon as I saw that, I was like, something feels different about this scene. But yeah, on IMDb it says the last scene, the scene at the cottage in the lakes, was shot in standard 35 millimeter and was actually, and this is where it explains that it was tagged on. Like money ran out during filming, so for a while, director Danny Boyle considered an open end, concluding with the freeze frame of Jim, Selena, and Hannah as they escape from the mansion. Which, might I say, when that happened, I
I
did kind
thought,
of cringe a
yeah,
little bit. I was like, "Oh, that's the freeze frame doesn't work." But yeah, so yeah, essentially,
they
it just explains everything that I just explained, and so, but yeah, it was. When the movie turned out to be a hit in the USA, the studio gave Boyle budget to film the semi-happy ending at the lakes, which was added to 1,400 US prints of the film while it was still in release.
yeah, and it's crazy too. While looking it up, I didn't realize the length in release dates between the UK and US release. When it
Oh, how
first
long was
released,
it?
when it released in the UK, it released November 1st of 2002. It didn't
Mm.
release in the US until June 27th of 2003.
Oh, so the UK people probably saw the original
Yeah,
death
they saw
ending.
the original, and then I think they took all the critique and then gave the US audience what the critiques were based off that. And that's where I
Mm.
think the money came from, was that run during the UK. Because
That's
dude,
interesting.
this movie was a fucking box office hit. It was made for $8 million, and between everything, it made 82.8. So,
Damn.
and I guarantee you, at least probably what 25% of that's from the UK. This is a very British film in comparison to the sequel.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely one of the drawing points of this is that it is heavily like featuring, like it's entirely set in the UK, and so that,
All the actors are British, though. The writer
well,
director
Killian
British.
Murphy isn't British, and
Oh
neither
yeah,
is
he's
Brendan
Irish.
Gleeson.
He's
Well,
Irish.
Brendan
Sorry.
Gleeson is also not British,
That
but
bro, fuck, that's right. I always do that.
um,
I always think Brendan Gleeson is British, bro.
what is he Scottish? I think he. Oh, yeah, he is because he
Is
was
he? I thought he
in.
was Irish.
No, I think he's Scottish.
Brendan
Yeah, he's or
Gleeson.
sorry, no, he's Irish. Yeah, he is Irish.
Okay, that's what I thought.
So yeah, so you got
Um,
two Irish actors that I mean, I know Killian Murphy doesn't like being called British. So
but
that's a
still,
very important distinction that they are not British.
like the crew, it was obviously shot in the UK.
Yeah.
Crew's primarily UK. Like I said, the writer director are both British. Like still heavy British influence outside of like those two.
Yeah, and I don't know, it's just a much more interesting setting in, compared to the US. There's too many US centric stuff,
I think
and
that's
it's a
why.
very interesting take on the genre
Yeah,
coming from like a predominantly, British mindset. I will say so though, it's interesting because that in that opening scene, when he's going up to like the have you seen these people, like the missing people stuff,
yeah,
a lot of people in the a lot of people in the US thought that it was insensitive because this movie came out after 9/11.
oh my god.
But it's interesting because while they were shooting this movie when 9/11 happened, and I'm pretty sure it was the scene where they're celebrating with Frank. But like I said earlier, this was all shot in sequential order. So that was literally the first thing that they shot, which was all of that stuff in of him walking around a deserted London. And so 9/11 happened long after they shot that stuff. So it's just like it has nothing to do with anything. And also, there was, I feel like it's wrong for us as Americans to like force on this whole like never forget thing with 9/11 onto like other countries, which I don't
Yeah,
know.
no, I agree. Something about this film too that I picked up on this time that I found really intriguing was the use of the sound design.
Mm,
Um, because that's at least in horror films my biggest gripe. Like I hate jump scares, or I shouldn't say I hate jump scares. I hate modern jump scares. I
yeah.
think jump scares can work if they're used effectively and not just like something flashes on a screen with a giant loud noise attached to it, just randomly shoved in there. Like I want
Hmm.
something with build up, trick me out maybe once or twice. Like jump scares don't even need to have like the loud sounds to it. But what I found really interesting was something that just kind of always got my heart rate up during this film was whenever you saw the zombies rushing to them, the sound design and the point of view of the camera kind of go hand in hand. You always kind of see this weird. It cuts between first person but also third person POV of the zombies running towards like the little main group of characters with the Selena and Jim, but there's no sound attached to them running until they make themselves aware to the main characters. And the
Mm.
whole time I thought that was like a really interesting editing perspective to attach because for me, I'm always expecting the zombie to hit him, but it's that anticipation of when the sound's gonna hit because I don't know, it just freaked me out and I can't really explain why.
Yeah, I mean, I noticed a lot of like there's a lot of like really quiet moments that I really appreciated. Like, and normally you'd think that like because I so one of the things that I remember that we were taught was that silence isn't really silence. It's like there should always be like some sort of noise to balance out the silence so that you can really tell that it's silent. Or that's a really weird way of explaining it, but that's essentially what it is. But I remember while watching, there was a lot of times where I was like, "Damn, I really can't hear anything," and it really made me like paranoid while I was watching because I was just like, "Damn, I'm seeing things, but I'm not hearing anything," and it's really off putting to me. And so I appreciate that. I don't know. There's a lot of things that I appreciate that even though this is like really low budget movie, they still took a lot of care in like crafting it, and like even though we kind of talked earlier about some of like the weird like rule breaking things, like it still feels like a complete uh cohesive vision. And like there wasn't really much when I was watching the movie where it like actively bothered me. 28 weeks later is a different story, but we'll get to that. um
Yeah.
but overall, I really like how this movie was made, and I really was delightfully surprised by the story and how invested I got in like the characters and their bonds with each other.
Yeah, I I liked it, but man, I hate to do this to kid actors.
Oh,
But the girl
the
that
yeah, Hannah.
played Hannah, God bless her
Trying to
soul
remember her
or whatever,
name.
but they couldn't have found anyone else.
Well,
Anybody.
another thing that's funny about that is that she was Danny Boyle's first and only choice to play that role.
I just refuse to believe that.
That's what it says on IMDb, and I'm trying to
I
remember her fucking name.
I don't even think I'd believe it if he told me it himself.
Megan Burns is her name, and she's
Yeah.
only been in a handful of things. But one of the projects that she was in before this was a movie called Liam, and that's the movie that got her this role. According to IMDb, Danny Boyle saw that movie and liked her so much that he offered her the role in this movie. There's
That's
something else about like
wild.
her, like he says something about like her acting ability, like he
It's an
praises it or
ability of
something.
something, I'll say.
I will say, yeah, she's has such like a monotone delivery of everything. Sometimes it works, but most of the time it doesn't, and you can really tell that she's not really acting, she's just saying the
She's
lines.
in the line,
And
yeah.
it's really hard to like it's really hard to get over because everyone else is such like a heavyweight. I know like at the time they were unknown, but you've got Brendan Gleeson and Naomi Harris, who are Academy Award nominees, and then you've got Killian Murphy, who is now an
A
award
winner.
winner, and it just doesn't match with the vibe of the movie because you'd expect everyone to be a little more like, I don't know, just have some sort of emotion
Well,
because they're literally in an apocalypse. But
I just
anyways,
hate it though because it happens every time I watch when when Hannah and when Selena gives Hannah
The
the
Valium.
Valium to just not, like, not feel anything. Like, it's such a heavy-handed and emotional moment, but Hannah, like, Megan Burns, I'm not trying to be hypercritical, but the way she goes about just, like, acting like drugged up is just so funny. And I laughed every single time.
I
It's
mean, I
just
think
like,
that's supposed to
bro,
be a little funny, but
but like, why? Why is this supposed to be funny? Like, you guys are just like, you're giving her drugs so she doesn't have to feel being like the R word. Like, you
yeah.
know what I mean? Like, what? Why would they? Why would you want to make that funny in a superficial, serious film for like 99% of it? I It's just really weird because then
Well, I
she's
mean, the
just
whole
like,
movie's not
I
like
think
that, but
it's kicking in, but I'm not tired. Like, oh my god, bro.
I just that scene in particular isn't my least favorite. Like that part is because she's not talking as much, and when she's talking, like the voice that she uses, or the way that she delivers it is supposed to be more like that. But it's the rest of the movie that kind of bothers me a little bit. But yeah, yeah. The whole movie's not supposed to be dark and grim though. Like there's some moments of levity, and there's a heart like at the core of the movie too, with like the main group.
Well, yeah, because she doesn't kill Jim in the blink of an eye, bro. Did you not get it? Like, because she loves him, bro. They kiss. Like, they fall
It
on like tongue.
sounds like you don't like their romance in this movie.
Well, it just kind of felt forced because they didn't really seem like they had chemistry, let alone it never seemed like the story wanted them to be together. And
Mhm.
then the
I
third
mean, they
act
weren't
comes
supposed to be
along.
together. He was
That that
supposed to die.
that's what I'm saying. And then the third act comes in, and then they're just like, "Oh, dude, I can't. I'm just gonna fuck you right here." I'm just like, okay. I mean,
Okay, I will say I will say one when they started kissing, I was like, he's got
it
a
was just
lot
such
of
a.
blood on him. But
That's what I'm
also,
saying. Like, it's just so
I was
weird.
actively thinking in my head, I was like, okay, you're kissing too long. Hannah's in trouble. You need to go help her.
They're
And
just being
there's
horned up for
zombies
no
running throughout the
reason.
house now too.
That he let loose, by the way, too. He like, I don't know, bro. I don't know. I'm not saying it's a issue. I just thought it was a weird 180 all of a sudden. Like, I thought the actors were good and they have chemistry.
Hmm.
The film just doesn't set it up whatsoever, and then it just randomly does it, and so it's just kind of jarring,
Mm.
especially with all of the super R word stuff going on. It's just a weird transition with all the timing.
You know, you can
Like,
say other words than that, right?
no, yeah, I know, but I don't feel like any way is really good saying it. But you get my point.
No,
You
yeah,
get
yeah,
my
yeah,
point.
yeah. Um, yeah. Do you want to talk about 28 Weeks Later now?
Yeah, I fucking can't stand this film anymore after watching it
So,
because I
like,
never watched them back
what
to
did you
back.
think of it before rewatching it now? Like, you liked it, and like, what did you
I,
like
I,
about it?
I enjoyed it because remember when I texted you? Oh man, I'm at the 50-minute mark. I'm fucking losing my mind.
Hmm.
That's when I realized how fucking far into the film before it gets good I
Oh, yeah, I
realized it
did kind of notice
was.
that as well. Yeah,
Because this film's like 15 minutes shorter than the first one.
somehow.
The characters are somehow shittier. Like, I don't care about any of them, and the film spends way more time building up all their relationships when it doesn't need to, I think. But hey, it's got the dude who created the Jeremy Renner app in it, so I think that instantly gives it a 5 out of 5 for me. But like, it's also got a banging cast, but also I feel like it
They're
totally
heavily
misunderstands the
underutilized,
first.
though.
I know they're heavily underutilized, and I think the filmmakers just didn't understand the first one
Well, yeah, I
because
mean,
they just kind of.
it's important
I
to
told you about
note.
this. They retcon everything.
Yeah, well, so yeah, it's important to note that this is from a different director,
Yeah, and writer, right?
Juan Carlos Fresnadillo. I hope I said that name right. But it's different. There's three writers attached to this one, including the director. And it's very obvious that this movie was solely made for financial profit. And I say that like it is kind of meant to be negative in connotation, but this movie is like not the worst like for profit sequel that I've seen, but it is very noticeable in the things that like are different from this movie compared to the last one. Um,
This is as mainstream as it gets, and I think
yeah,
that's like
that's
its
my
biggest
main problem with
issue.
it. It's not as grounded and it's not
It's a
as like
Hollywood film, and I think
yeah,
that's the perfect way to explain it. It's
yeah.
got notable stars. I mean, at the time weren't big, but they were
I
well
mean,
known. Like
Rose Byrne
they
was
were
in
no
Star
Rose.
Wars though,
That's what I'm
bro.
saying. Like Rose Byrne was known. They were known enough. They weren't
Yeah.
like who they are now, but they were well known enough more than like Killian Murphy was. I think Killian Murphy that 28 Days was his first feature film role.
It wasn't
I
his
think
first feature, but it was his first leading role.
that's what it was. Okay, I knew it was his first something role, and it was his leading.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it just feels like it was put through a machine and just shipped out. And I mean that in every worst way possible.
Well, I think it's funny because like they were originally planning on having everyone return, but Danny Boyle and Killian Murphy were doing Sunshine, which is another movie we should talk about sometime in the future.
It's such a good movie.
And then, oh, which oddly enough, Rose Byrne is also in that movie as well,
Yep,
which is weird because why couldn't Killian and Danny make time
just
for this
talk
one
each
either?
other, bro.
But anyways, Alex Garland was also working on Sunshine, um, and then Naomi Harris had other stuff too going on, and so it really didn't work scheduling wise, and so they quickly realized like, oh, we just got to go in like a new direction, which is fine, but like
This
everything,
is the wrong direction.
yeah, everything that's fresh and inventive about 28 Days Later is completely missing in this because you've got a very US centric story now. Then you've got like a like military US. So and then um you've got like the zombies behaving more
Like
stereotypically like a
zombies, yeah.
zombie. Um
The thing I find ironically funny about this film is I think the opening is the best part of the film, but then the film is trash. But then I kind
you know
of,
why the opening is the best part of the movie?
oh God, no.
Because
Why?
that's the only part of the movie that was directed by Danny Boyle.
Of course, bro.
Danny
Of
Boyle
fucking course.
did some second unit shooting on this movie, but that was the only one that he was attached to the first unit production.
That's funny because it's such a good opening,
It
and
is really
then
good.
none of the film is like that.
Yeah.
It gives. I think the opening sets up wrong expectations,
Hmm.
which is
Hmm.
also part of the issue. Um, and
Well,
then
yeah, because the
going
opening feels very similar to the first one, and then you quickly see like what happens, and in that Robert Carlyle's character is just a bastard, and but then it quickly becomes about his children, and like I don't hate the children, I like them, they're the most fleshed out characters. The problem is just that I went into this movie expecting it to be about Jeremy Renner and Rose Byrne's character, and then they're not really
it's not about
characters.
them. They're not characters in the film, bro.
And so it kind of made their deaths feel awkward in that like I don't know. I didn't feel much for Jeremy Renner's death or Rose Byrne's, other than like the initial like shock value of it. Um,
I didn't really care for many of the characters in this film outside of maybe Alice because her husband just like straight up ditched her with, which I'm trying to stay away from like going down the shit pile that is like the connection and like how anything works in this film and trying to like make it work even in the same universe as the last film because
mm.
I cannot sit here and tell you 5 times how Alice gets out of that house in the beginning because that's I don't know why she goes back to like her original like none of this the story in this film really makes sense to me, and it
Mhm.
all kind of just feels like it happens to happen.
Well,
Meanwhile,
a lot of like the breakout is like that because one, the children are able to sneak away very easily, like without being detected,
and they're
and
the only
then
children there. Like, bro, why are they
yeah,
the only children? Like, that's so. Like, I think they try to explain it because Don, the father, has like connections with the government, but it also doesn't make sense why he has connections to the government. But then it also doesn't make sense why the U.S. government wants to be there when in the first film the U.S. was also being like rampart with the virus. So
yeah.
it just kind
Well,
of
yeah,
cascades into
there's
all these different like. It
weird.
frustrates me.
Yeah,
Sorry,
there's weird continuity stuff. Like
littered,
there's
just littered throughout.
we you mentioned the whole thing. Like people should remember that in 28 Days Later, when Naomi Harris and Killian Murphy's character are like first like talking with each other, she mentions that when the broadcast stopped, they were hearing news that um, there was infection in both Paris and New York. Yes, there is the part at the end where Sergeant Farrell is like raving about how like, oh, we're just an island, they quarantined us off, the rest of the world hasn't stopped. But it's odd that you going into this when it's just like, oh, there's no infection anywhere like at
It's
all.
straight
And
up just a localized thing that only happened here, and people are just like, you stay the fuck away.
yeah, it's not helped any better in the next one 28 years later, because from what I've heard, this isn't really much of a spoiler, but I don't know, maybe someone will consider it, because I'm pretty sure Danny Boyle has spoken about this in interviews, that
It's just on.
it,
It's just
it is
UK, right?
yeah, it is just a UK thing. But yeah, I don't know. It's just weird, and again, that speaks to like a lot of the production stuff. Like they didn't have everything fully fleshed out yet while shooting. Um, but this one is just weird because they also don't explain a very important thing here. Because throughout the entirety of 28 Days Later, you're led to believe that um, the virus can spread, to anything that's like living. And in this one, there's a very important line of dialogue that Rose Byrne's character says that contradicts that, because she says that the infection doesn't cross species, which I thought when I first heard that, I had to like stop and rewind and be like, hold on a second. Did you really just say that? But I guess the explanation for that is that it's a confusion between order and species, meaning
Huh?
like the rage virus can infect all species within the primate order, but it can't infect any other order, like aquatic life forms, for example.
See, that's so unnecessarily complicated that I didn't even like pick up on that.
Well, it's because they don't explain it. Like, because all we know is that the chimps, can pass it to humans, and then we just automatically assume
No,
that
it's
it
through like the
crossed.
liquid, like some like liquid
Well, they
through
explain it.
like
It's through
person.
blood. It's through the blood and the saliva and all that stuff. Like, so they don't explain it in the first one, and they don't explain it here either. They just say it in like passing dialogue, but when you hear it, it's just automatically confusing because you're like, well, that's not what we were told in the first movie,
And then
and so
also
it's
the
just weird.
zombies like are acting different. Like the
Yeah,
transformations are wild. Like instead of like that 10-15 second rule from the first one, they kind of just instantly like transform in this. And like you were saying, going off your point before of they lean into more of that traditional zombie ideology. Like this one, they're straight up just trying to bite someone. You know what I mean? Like the
yeah,
last one, they were just brutally ripping them apart and murdering them. I feel like once you start doing like biting for an arm or the neck, that's when you're starting to like lean into tropes where this
yeah.
isn't what you were trying to do the first time, or this isn't what they were trying to do the first time. Why are you trying to why are you trying to do something generic when you're trying to copy this film so much
Mhm.
in so many other ways? So it feels weird. It's trying to be so much like the first film, but trying so hard not to be like the first film at the same time that I'm sitting here like, bro, what is going on?
Well, yeah, and that's the same thing with like one of the big plot points of the movie is that the children, well, the mom too, the mom survives getting bitten and infected. And I use that term loosely, but like she doesn't turn into like a rage monster essentially, or like an animal. And so naturally, the children, or one of the children at least, were shown in the movie, has that same sort of like immunity. And again, I use that term loosely, which I've seen that before. Like there's other movies that are like that, where like there's someone who like The Last of Us is a good example. I know those aren't technically zombies either, but you know, whatever. We don't have to argue about that again. But so it's like I've seen this before, and it's not as interesting anymore. Like I don't know. It's just so obvious that they're trying. Really, the only similarity between this one and the last one is that one, it takes place in the UK, and two, there's like a group of people that are like trying to like survive together and kind of form like what's the word I'm looking for?
Like a society.
No, they form like a family type bond or whatever.
Oh
There's another
yeah.
word that I'm thinking of, but I can't think of it right now.
I feel like I know what word you're talking about, but I also cannot think of
A
it.
surrogate family. That's the
Sure,
word. Yeah.
yeah.
But you know, they're not together enough. Like literally the first thing that Rose Byrne's character, I don't even remember her name to be honest, but literally the first thing Rose Byrne's character says when she like sees the children for the first time is like, why the fuck are there children in my medical center? Like she clearly doesn't want them to be there, and she also clearly doesn't really start to like
Also,
care
why are they there?
until she finds out that there's something in their like genes or their DNA that's important for like finding a cure and a vaccine. And then Jeremy Renner's character, his whole thing is just weird because like he's sporadically in the first act, but he's not really a character of importance, and then he all of a sudden just becomes one. And then again, I never really know why it's important that these characters are together and why they care about each other. That I we kind of get the sense of in the first one.
Yeah, all I keep thinking about is how infuriating it gets me every time I see Don kiss his wife.
Oh,
It's literally the most brain rot fucking thing to write on this planet, I believe.
I'm
That's
just
just me
really
though.
annoyed at how like
The way
the
this film unfolds just bothers me
yeah,
as a
well, because
whole.
there's no security, like there's no security guard. One, you found a random person, don't know if she's infected, no one there watching.
Yeah, they didn't do any
Two,
quarantine process. Like, bro, she
yeah,
found out just after she was ready to like put stuff in her to do like surgery or whatever.
mhm.
Like, bro, did you guys not at least look at her arm before you came in?
And
Like,
then two, how the fuck does he even get down there? Like they don't
that's
explain.
that's my
Like,
point. How is he such a fucking military guy all of a sudden?
yeah, it's so dumb
Why
that they
why
have
is it
no
his kids of
precautions.
everyone in the world gets
Mhm.
to come
They don't
back?
even have any cameras. They
No.
literally find out like after he's killed everyone that there's a breach, and it's just like, okay, well, you guys didn't have any form of like monitoring going on to like make sure that shit like this didn't happen.
And then their quarantine processes are just like even worse. Like these motherfuckers put all these people into like a cow slaughter. Like that's literally what it is. They shove them into a basement in a room with locked doors.
Well, then clearly the locks didn't work either, because not only does Robert Carlyle break through one of the doors, the double doors, but then when everyone's freaking out, they also manage to push through the doors
Yeah.
that they were locked behind.
And then their
But
next
there's
option just
another,
blow everything. Just
yeah.
fucking demolish it.
Well, it's their own fucking fault for not
I
being
know,
able to
like
fucking, like take care of this shit. I'm just like, you guys don't deserve to be in charge of anything if this is how poorly you handled this. And the other thing that I saw, like there were a lot of things that I was seeing on like IMDb about like the goofs in the goofs section of like when they're examining um Alice, none of the doctors are wearing any other form of protection other than like the surgical mask, even though they know that it's transmittable via blood and like bodily liquids. And it's just like there's just so many dumb things that when you stop to think about them, you're just like, that's really annoying and frustrating that they got that wrong. Like all of the care that we talked about in like the first movie is not
Lost.
here. Like
It's in the
as
wind,
soon
bro.
as it changed hands, all of that went out the window. And I'm not saying that this movie is like that bad. I still enjoyed watching it. It's still very tense, but again, it's missing a lot of the things that made the original one like so unique and interesting.
If it was his own film, I think it'd work a lot better.
Yeah, yeah, and it's very obvious that they kind of just it to me. It kind of feels like this was originally a script for a different movie, and then 28 days later came out, and they were like, "Hey, let's just slap this on." But I
And
know
tie
that's
up
not
some
I know that's not
knots.
true, but it feels that way.
I wouldn't be shocked if someone lied to say it wasn't true, only for it to be true.
Also this movie also wasn't shot on digital. There's one scene in this movie that like this is literally the reverse of fucking 28 days later. In that movie everything was shot on digital except for the last scene, and in this movie everything was shot on film except for the last scene. You know the scene where they show the zombies or the infected running through the subway and up into Paris?
Yeah.
That was not originally in the movie either. Originally, it was supposed to end with the empty helicopter, but then for some fucking reason, the filmmakers thought it would be a good idea to show that the virus had actually spread to a place that we knew it already was because in the first movie they said it was there. But anyways, I digress. They got like 3 crew members and hired a couple of local actors to just run, you know, through the subway and then outside the Eiffel Tower or whatever. And they slapped that onto the movie and sent it out. But yeah, that
And
was
they're
the
not
only
going to
scene.
acknowledge it in this next one. I
No, right.
guarantee you.
But yeah, literally, that was the only thing that was shot on a camcorder. And I'm trying to remember. Hold on, I have it up here. It was a Sony HVR Z1E camera, which is the only yeah digital camera that they used. Everything else was shot on like an RE camera. There's a couple of like 16 millimeter and like 35 millimeter. Um, oh, actually, I forgot that was one thing I forgot to mention on the last one. The only other thing that wasn't shot on digital was the flashback scene with Jim and his parents. That was all 16 millimeter, but or sorry, 8 millimeter. Anyways, so yeah, I this one definitely feels more polished than the first one.
It's clean.
That's another one of the draws of the first one is that it looks different because at
It
the
doesn't.
time that
It
was one of the
doesn't
first
have any
movies.
style.
Yeah, that was a very important part of its style that it was one of the first movies or like bigger movies to be primarily shot on digital. And then you immediately go into this and you're just like this feels completely opposite. It doesn't feel like a 28 movie.
No, it doesn't, and that's why I'm kind of shocked going back to it that I kind of liked it as much as I used to.
Mm.
Um, I don't hate it by any means. Like you said, there's still some good tense moments. You know, I do enjoy watching Jeremy Renner and Rose Byrne, so just always kind of seeing them is just more of a me thing. I just enjoy
Yeah.
watching them, regardless if their characters have like chemistry or not. But this film is just unapologetically American for some reason, and I really don't know why. I wish it wasn't. I really,
Because they're
I
trying to
wish
be
it
more
wasn't.
mainstream.
Which makes no sense. Like I get it in the sense of being mainstream, but like Rose Byrne, she's not American. You know, Robert Carlyle not American, Idris Elba not American. No one's American in this, bro. Like I'm trying
You
to
mean in
look
real
at
life?
yeah, like Juan Carlos Fernandez. He grew up in the Canary Islands of Spain. Like,
Well,
brother,
you know what's
what?
funny? I would literally accept any other foreign power being involved except the Americans. Like literally, if it was literally like if it was the French or something, or even a combination, it's just really annoying to me going immediately from 28 Days Later, which we talked about was so predominantly British, to it being so predominantly American for no reason.
But that's the thing. It's so predominantly British that's just trying to be American, and it makes no
Hmm.
sense. It makes no sense because Jeremy Renner's the only American in this film,
Yeah,
and
where
the
is
only one.
Rose Byrne? Oh, she's Australian.
She's Australian, yeah, and Idris
That's
Elba
interesting.
is British,
Yeah, yeah.
from the UK.
I think it's funny that like watching movies where Idris Elba wasn't like
They both put
as
on
big of a
American accents, and
star.
then neither one of them are good. Like,
Well, I mean, they're not horrible, but
you're right. They're just sucky. Sorry,
I
I'm just
wouldn't go that far. But
hypercritical about it. I'm hypercritical about it because it's just unnecessary things that I feel like
yeah,
they needed to do.
yeah, it's hard to take this one as seriously and not want to just like tear into it because it feels so contradictory to the first one.
I fucking agree. God bless Danny Boyle coming back.
Yeah, all the more reason to get excited about the new one. The new one genuinely looks really good. I'm excited about it. Like I remember seeing the
I'm
trailers and I was
glad
like,
you
oh, that
said that
looks
because I remember you
interesting.
were kind of like, it looks okay
Well,
when
yeah,
we.
like I didn't know, I hadn't seen any of them, and so now having it's the same with Final Destination. Now I want to watch the other ones. So
I mean, there's no more outside of the one in theaters, but I am curious, like, because Killian Murphy he's a producer on this whole new trilogy that they're making, and his character is supposed to have a small role in the second film coming out.
mhm.
Which, ironically, I was gonna text this to you earlier, but I decided to save it for the show. The second film is coming out 28 weeks after this one that just came
Wait,
out.
really?
Years, yeah, on the
I
dot.
didn't know that.
Yeah, so I thought that
That's
was a cool
crazy.
little. Yeah, right. That's a cool little fun
There's not
fact.
even like any trailers or anything for it.
Nope, it's all filmed. There's no promotion for it, and I think it's called like the Skull Temple or something. 28 years later, the Skull Temple.
Hmm.
Um, so I'm really interested about that, and honestly, I'm really glad that you have like the same response that you did with Final Destination, because I remember you being like, no, I hate zombie films, and I'm like, I know it's like a zombie film, but it's not like really a zombie film. It's not like more in that traditional sense. At least
Okay,
the first one isn't.
that I can agree with you on, but
um
I will never not disagree with you on the fact that they
no,
aren't
I won't
zombies.
bust your balls. Yeah, it is a zombie film at the end of the day, but it's not like your traditional pulling guts out of someone's stomach like George A. Romero, you know?
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
more thoughtful. Like, they're trying to give you like, that's what I think works about like the rage virus as a whole. It's a very it could happen thing, and I think
Mhm.
that's always what makes these type of things scarier, especially when we deal with disease outbreaks pretty frequently in the modern
Yeah.
day.
Well, I mean, I
Um,
think that's why it works so well because at the time, it moved
Bird
away
flu
like
too. Think
zombies.
about it.
What's up?
The bird flu was
Yeah,
a big thing. Like,
but yeah, it's just that they wanted zombies to mean something again, and you
not just like
know
a brainless dummy walking around.
yeah, and so what they ended up doing was like, well, what's this idea of like a virus spreading? Because my understanding is that it's primarily based on the Ebola, sorry, it's primarily based on the Ebola virus,
Yeah.
which is another thing that I remember we dealt with a while back. So I don't know, it just, I know honestly, I feel like that makes this one feel a lot less dated, and we just talked about how it was surprising how relevant this still is.
Yeah, that's why the sequel's just like American Saviors, full American action pick. That's it.
And they
I
don't
feel
even do a
like
good job either.
no, it
Like
just
the
kind of falls
Americans suck in
flat.
this movie. They're not good at their jobs.
No, I thought it was kind of whack, but Leo, why don't we get into like our grades, how we view them? What do you think about
Yes.
28 Days Later and 28 Weeks Later?
28 Days Later, I gave a tentative 4 out of 5 stars. Um, I think the only reason I didn't give it a 4.5 is because there were things that I after I finished watching, I was like, oh, maybe that could have been better. I'm still trying to figure out which I would prefer, which ending of the movie I would prefer. I know which ones I don't prefer, but it's really just the debate on whether or not I like the original or what was originally intended to be the theatrical version of him just dying in the hospital, sort of that ambiguous ending, or the one that we have now, which is him surviving with them and yada 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 yada. And honestly, I feel like I might not know until I see Killian return in the Bone Temple and the subsequent threequel. Um, but yeah, that was what I gave. 28 days later. Do you want me to do weeks or
I'll just do 20 and then we'll do weeks.
cool?
For 28 weeks, I gave it a 3.5. My review for it on Letterbox,
You give it.
Killian Do,
I did.
yeah, I'll give it explanation. Killian Doofy went full cock out for this, and you know what? I respect the fuck out of him for that. Hashtag sins out, dicks out. Um, but I'll say I don't think the camera stuff in 28 Days Later worked for me all the time. It
Yeah.
did kind of bug me during the nighttime sequences just because it was so grainy and ugly that it, like, I could not imagine trying to watch this on like an old box TV, bro, from like 2005 or something, early
Honestly, I feel like that's probably the
2000s.
way to go with this, though.
It might make it better, but
Because that's the thing. Like you don't notice the change, or you don't notice how low quality something is until you
that's
watch
true.
it on a higher quality in a higher quality setting.
And it's
Because
so low
like
quality that it
yeah,
kind of just isn't the best viewing experience all the time, and
yeah.
like that's not always a bad thing, but like I got tired of it by the end of the film,
Well,
I'll
see,
say.
found it more jarring while I was watching it, like the first 10, 15 minutes of the movie, because I wasn't expecting it to be as low quality. But I think a lot of people forget that even though technically, yeah, even though we talk about like how big of a deal it was that it was shot on digital, that doesn't necessarily mean that the quality was higher because digital was so like brand new. They hadn't really like we're only just figuring out fucking 6K and 8K. But yeah, because it was so new and they shot it on a camcorder, so it wasn't like a cinema camera either.
Ugly
So
piece of shit.
yeah, so it's gonna look like it. I don't even think it was shot in 1080. Maybe not. Maybe max like
Dude,
720p, which
I
is
was
just
gonna say
standard
720 is
definition.
probably being nice.
Yeah, and so you don't notice the quality difference until much later. And we're so used to everything being so like crisp and smooth and ultra high definition that our eyes struggle to like adjust to it. But yeah.
But then on top of that, like the weird relationship change between Jim and Selena, and like the third act with him going back for them, like it made sense. Like I'm not saying it didn't, but like it was just weird. It felt like more of the intention for him going back was because he was in love with her all of a sudden, rather than he actually built like an actual family bond and he cared about them in that way. And it felt kind of out of character for me in a sense that I liked the ending. It just felt weird in the moment. And then some of the acting moments, like I said, with the well, I can't remember the actress's name that
Megan
played
Burns.
Hannah, Megan Burns. Um, yeah, I haven't graded 28 weeks later. I think we should just get into that. But I would probably give it like a 1.5, 2 maybe.
Oh my god.
Out of 5, bro. Like the characters are just boring to watch. I'm sorry. Like the daughter's kind of unbearable. I find her quite annoying. I find the son quite annoying. I mean, dude, the guy from the Jeremy Renner app is cool and all because he has his own app. Rose Burns is Rose Burns. I just don't. I don't think the film is nowhere near as tension filled as the first one. Outside of the first scene, I
Mm.
don't think the style or any personality that the first one had, even though I did kind of just complain about it, it like none of it's there. It feels like this was just commissioned to make a check.
Yeah.
And I think it being in that vein brings it down a notch for me, that it wasn't made from a passion, and
Yeah.
it was outright blatantly known as like something just kind of cash in on. And I think that inherently just kind of puts a bad taste in my mouth. So it's a mix of different things, and I just don't think the story, if you want to call it that, is worth really telling. There's no real ideas. No one's trying to say anything. It's
Yeah.
just a film. There's a beginning. If you want to call it a middle act, there's a middle act, and then there's an end. And it kind of just makes it forgettable. Whereas I find myself thinking about 28 Days a lot more, and I think that's why they decided to bring back. Um, why am I just blanking on his name?
Danny Boyle and
No, yeah,
Alex
and
Garland.
and then what's his name? Killian Murphy.
Yeah.
That's what I was thinking. So that's my main argument. It feels like it's in bad vein and none of it's memorable. So I don't know why I would like give it more than a two.
Hmm. Yeah. I mean,
Original piece of shit. Sorry.
I. Fuck. Sorry. Choked on my spit. Fuck. I gave it I gave it a 3.5 out of 5, which I don't know. I may or may not change as well.
That seems high.
Here's the thing.
At least giving the first one a 4.
When you're yeah, I gave it a 4. When we're talking about it in terms of like it being a sequel, yeah, it's not really. I don't know. Even calling it a sequel feels like inaccurate. It's more like a spin-off. Now I think I'm gonna refer to it as a spin-off from now on. I'm not gonna call it a sequel
It's
anymore.
gotta be, right? I feel like I'm
Because
being
it
baited
literally has
into it
nothing
being
to
a
do with the
sequel.
original movie. Like they don't retain basically anything other than the fact that it's like through blood and like saliva and
I
shit.
dropped my mic. I did want to mention I'm so confused about the 28 Days Later title. Is it 28 days from when he wakes up and the virus starts, or is it 28 days from when the virus starts to when the movie ends? I need fucking answers, Danny.
I think it's because that at the time that was this is another thing I saw on IMDb. That's the time in which viruses were known to be at their peak contagiousness.
That's what I was assuming. I just thought it was weird because they put up the 28 days title, not the movie title, but like the little thing in the corner where it tells you the locations or times in films. It says 28 days later right after the opening sequence, and then you get his like fucking Killian's cock hanging out for us right there. Like, and then it does it again at the end, 28 days later. Like, bro, what the fuck? Sorry, that's just a nitpick.
Considering how that wasn't originally supposed to be the true ending, I'm gonna go ahead and say it's because it's 28 days after the spread of the infection.
That's what. Yeah, I'm just busting balls to bust balls with that one. Yeah,
but yeah, I think that 28 weeks later, even though it's not really a good sequel, it's fine as like your standard like genre fare. Like it still works as a zombie movie. And I liked some of the characters enough to care, and I felt that some of the tension works. Real quick, because we didn't talk about it, I do want to say the scene where Sam cuts off a bunch of infected's heads with like
with the helicopter
blades.
Sick.
That was actually pretty cool. I was like, "Oh fuck, this is like really cool." But
sick moment.
That's like there's moments throughout, and like when they're bombing the city, like that shot of him like watching it unfold below him. That's also really cool. But like minus a couple of like scenes and like moments like that, it's fine. It's an entertaining. It's an enjoyable enough movie. But if you're looking for something more
deep and
like
emotional,
28 Days Later was, you're gonna be disappointed.
Jesus Christ, that's all I have to say. But
yeah,
with that, Leo, what are we watching next week?
All right, so the next couple of weeks are going to be a little hectic, because we're doing a couple of two-parters. But next week we're going to be talking about the original Jurassic Park trilogy.
God help us.
Um, and I think I've seen all of those movies. I know I've seen the first and I know I've seen the last one, but I honestly don't remember a lot about the Lost World.
No way, bro.
Um,
That movie's iconic for all the wrong reasons.
I mean, yeah, I've heard things about it, but
Bro, they
anyways,
abduct the baby velociraptor.
mm, I thought it was a T Rex.
Oh yeah, sorry, T Rex. You're right. You're right.
Damn, have you not seen that movie? And I have.
No, I have.
Maybe
I
we're just
just,
getting mixed up.
bro. Honestly, after the first one, they all kind of mix into one
Yeah,
another.
yeah,
That's my issue. But
yeah.
we'll get more into that next
The
week.
only thing I remember from the third one is that they drink like dinosaur piss or something. But
No,
anyways,
that's Star Wars: The Last Jedi.
anyways, so yeah, and then the week after that, we're gonna talk about Jurassic World, the Jurassic World trilogy, leading up into the fourth Jurassic World movie that's coming out, Rebirth, which I'm actually kind of excited for. I don't know about you. I like Gareth Edwards as a filmmaker. He makes interesting movies. And it looks good. It looks interesting. It looks more interesting than any of the other Jurassic World movies were because I did not watch those.
That I'll hold my judgments. I'll hold my judgments because I think it
But
looks boring as fuck.
have you seen all of the Jurassic World movies?
Unfucking fortunately, I have.
Okay. So yeah, this is gonna be another. This is gonna be another series where you're more in the loop than I have because I refused to watch Jurassic World, Dominion, and what was
I
the second one?
oh my no, oh my god, fuck.
Fuck, I don't
Jurassic,
remember.
Jurassic World. Look it up, bro. I'm blanking.
um,
You're embarrassing me.
Jurassic World 2. What is it called?
You're gonna say it, and I'm be like, yes, that's the title. Dominion's the third
Fallen
one.
Kingdom.
Fallen Kingdom. That's right, because it
No
makes
wonder
absolutely.
yeah,
I,
no wonder we
I
couldn't
forgot.
remember it. It's a dumb title.
Well, no, because the title of the movie only takes place in the first 40 minutes of a 2.5 hour film.
Yeah, I
But
remember hearing that.
that's neither here or there. We'll talk about that one in 2 weeks. God help my
Yeah.
fucking soul, because I might blow my brains out. Um, yeah,
But
we'll
yeah,
see you
stay
guys
tuned
next
for
week.
that.